Hi, Kyle and Brent. We are so excited to have you guys on our podcast today. We met you, Brent, actually, when we both did 29029 Everesting this past September in Mount Tremblant. And you were our coach through the entire process. And that was amazing. And you were a rock star. And we loved everything about our experience. And I could cry just thinking about it still because it was so profound for me. And you told a powerful story about you and your brother Kyle while we were at 29029. And Stephanie and I were both like, wow, we need to have these guys on our podcast because you guys are amazing. And we are just so excited to share your stories with our community. So welcome. And before we kind of get started in the conversation, one thing we love to ask our guests is if you had no constraints, any constraints on your day or on your life, how would you spend your day? We'd love to hear from both of you.
I mean, I think we're actually doing it. I think a day like yesterday where we worked all day, no, that's not what I mean. I just mean that Kyle and I are two of the luckiest people in the world that, 13 years ago, we set out to help other people like Kyle. And not only are we doing that, we get to do it with them. I mean, a couple of months before Kona, we went and rode all the way out to Alabama and we spent our whole day together on a bicycle, so I think we're actually doing it. We're doing these things together. We're enjoying our lives together. And I don't know that I would want to change that.
Yeah, I agree throughout the Kona training and even on race day. We kept saying to one another, you are right where you're supposed to be. Uh-huh. And I think that we are right where we're supposed to be. And I love what we get to do. It's hard sometimes, but it's hard to run your own business. But I love where we are. I guess we had a little bit more downtime, but that will come sooner than later.
You guys, I think, are the first people to have ever said that you're happy with where you are right now. So that's pretty amazing.
It is. And what a great kickoff to this
I'm already getting
conversation.
teary.
I am. I'm not sure if I'll be able to continue.
That's a problem.
Either Brent or Kyle, and both of you, maybe it's, for both of you to share. How did you first decide to take on endurance sports together? And what drove you to pursue the Ironman races? I mean, not many people do Ironman, and yet you guys are doing them together.
Yeah, I think Brent will be the first one to tell you that when he was in college, he did what most college kids do, and you drink and you have a good time, and then after you graduate, you're like, what do I do now? And so Brent started to get into endurance sports, and his first Ironman that he did was in 2010, and he's going.
So Kyle and the whole family came to see that first Ironman. I think this is part of the story I told at Tremblant, more about some of the things that were happening around, which we can, of course, get into because I think that probably applies to y'all's endurance story. But Kyle just watched the whole thing and was really kind of mesmerized by what was happening. And, he ended the day by asking me, can people in wheelchairs do Ironman? Because what he saw was his life. He saw these people that went through these ups and downs. I mean, you see it at the Everesting challenges. People they're at the highest of highs and the lowest of low and everything in between to get to that final moment. And then you realize that all those little moments kind of leading up to that were what was so important. And so when Kyle asked that, our whole life had been about including Kyle. And so it was a very simple yes to a very complex problem at the time of how to even do it. So it started with Ironman that Kyle saw me and other people doing it. And that was what always spoke to us. What we learned since then, to kind of say why Ironman too, is that there's not an event that we've done, 5K, marathon, any type of event that we've done that has challenged Kyle physically and mentally the way Ironman does. And he loves that because he wants to be an athlete too. And Ironman allows that for Kyle.
How has your experience been working together?
Depends on the day.
Because I mean, at the end of the day, you're brothers, right? And like you have to have that brotherly or sibling,
Well, without busting out our organization chart here and showing you all the ways, because we've grown. I mean, we've got a much bigger company than when we first started. And when we first started, it was really just me running the organization, and Kyle was an athlete and a board member. And so I think now what I would tell you is that working together is great. Learning how to work together as brothers has been the hardest thing to learn in the last 12 months, because what we've both learned is that a lot of the things that we feel or experience that are tension, or that is tension, it's really just more the brotherly nature. Like me making, like one of the things I do in our meetings is I'll throw paper at the inclusive employees. And to me, it was like, I want them to come to the office. I want them to be included. So we're going to have a little bit of fun. And Kyle's like, that's not professional. You can't do that. So as we start talking through it, what you start to realize, it's like, just as a brother, it's annoying to him that I'm flicking paper around the room. It's really not a business conversation. So that's the part we've had to learn, is to say, hey, like there's times where we are co-founders and we are trying to make this business successful, nonprofit or not. And there are times that we're just trying to be brothers, and that includes flicking paper at each other and also pushing each other.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of laughs along the way, but like earlier this week, there was a good conversation, a good learning opportunity for me to manage up, and Brad had to coach me along the way on how to get the most out of people and get them to, feel appreciative, So in the middle of laughing and conversating, we do have to have those tough conversations. But those tough conversations, they make you better and they help you to grow as a leader in your career.
And, because you guys have an interesting dynamic, you're working together. Like other maybe spouses or siblings work together in sort of like an office corporate job maybe, but then you're competing together in these intense endurance events, and you're spending hours and days training, and you're pushing, Brent and Kyle, you're biking. Like, what's it like? What's it like when you're training together for that long of a period,
The training is the best part, because we get to hang out for 8 or 9 hours and, make sure that the process is good for both of us, and that we are pushing ourselves beyond the limit. So I would say that the training for me is the best part.
So I've got a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, and all parents with older kids always tell me, like, car ride's the best time, because there's nowhere the kid can go. Like, you're in the car and it's like they're vulnerable because they need your help or whatever.
Yep.
Training is a lot like that. If there was, let's say we took some tension out of the office, for example, and we're both a little irritated with each other. When you get on the bike for 5 hours, there's nowhere to go. Yeah. It's just the two of us. And that the bike ride we did to Alabama, which was in our last video, chapter 5, we were on the bike for over 7 hours together. And it's some of the best conversations we've ever had about the upcoming race, because we were just in this intentionally vulnerable state together, where like Kyle's asking me, he hasn't seen the kids in a little while because he's been busy. What's going on? And then all of a sudden, before you know it, we start talking about how grateful we are to be doing this. And that same conversation showed up again on race day. So those moments that you get in training are what make the race day experience what it is. You think about your own personal experience with Everesting. It was the stuff that led up to that moment that when you walked into that room to hear me speak or one of the other speakers that day, you were already ready to receive that message. And when you got on the mountain and you started struggling, you already knew what you were going to try and do. Doesn't mean we're always all successful. I mean, Kyle and I have failed at this in racing as much as we've succeeded, but the training part is the best because we don't have anywhere to go but with each other.
I love that. That's so beautiful. And it's true. Like, even I'm thinking, if I need to have I do have older kids, and having a tough conversation with a kid, I'm like, maybe we should go do a 10-mile bike ride and see what comes out of it.
It removes the barriers, right? Like,
right.
You start to exhaust yourself. I mean, when are you usually in the car with your kids? It's after an activity, right? It's after a day of school. It's after sports or a play date or something. And they're already a little tired. And so the barriers aren't as strong as they might have been when they walk in the door and you say, how was your day? Fine. And so when Kyle and I spent that bike ride, we love going to it because we had all these great moments within that day. And we had some tough ones, because it was hard. I mean, at the very end, Kyle, I knew I was going to do this all day. I didn't tell him. So the bike ride was from Atlanta, Georgia to Anniston, Alabama. And it's a 95-mile bike ride. Wow. And I knew that when I hit 95, I wasn't letting Kyle off the bike. I was going to turn around and go 2.5 miles backwards on the trail and then come back so that we hit 100. So we finished the day with at least 100 miles. And when we turned around, it was kind of up a hill for like a quarter mile. And all of a sudden I could see Kyle wincing. And I said, what's going on? He said, my legs are really tight. I'm sore. And I was like, buddy, we got to do 100. And, like, that was probably one of the most vulnerable moments where he couldn't get off the bike and just get on his phone and start over. And so, sometimes you do that. You're like, well, maybe I'll just do a 10-mile ride with my kids, or I'll throw them in the car after, baseball, and we're going to drive to dinner instead because it's a longer car ride. So we love that we get to do that part of it. And we always include Kyle. Like, it's never been, I go train and then we just show up on race day together. It's no, we've been getting ready for Kona for 2 years. We've had a lot of these moments together over the last 2 years to be ready for that final moment on October 26th.
And you said vulnerability. And I think that's one thing that sort of resonated with me when you guys are talking. Like, you're in these confined spaces, you have a plan, you're going to bike for 100 miles, and you're both probably able to be so much more vulnerable with each other, which is where that like deep connection, as brothers and just as friends for anyone. And I do think that is part of the beauty of these endurance events and training for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of our listeners don't really know the story of the two of you. And, you have the Kyle Pease Foundation. And can you tell us a little bit about what it was like going to Kona? Like, the day before the race, what was going through your head? What were you guys thinking about while you were actually racing? Did you know you would finish? Like, did you go into it like, we've got this? Like, can you share a little bit about that whole experience?
Yeah, I think for me, you have to give the course the ultimate respect. And if you go in there and you say, oh, we got this, we can do this, then the course is gonna, throw a curveball at you. So you have to be ready for whatever the course is, whatever the elements are gonna provide you that day. And then you can start gearing yourself up for it. And that's what we love about this sport is that, yes, I may not do the physical activity of each sport, but can you imagine stay mentally sharp for 14 hours and not having a doubt of negativity coming on, or, if something hurts, I have to stay positive. But at the same token, can you imagine what it is for my brother to push for 14 hours, not all by himself, but for two of us? So the commitment that it takes for both of us is something that we don't take for granted at all.
So I would work a little bit backwards to kind of maybe help answer for your listeners. So on Sunday night after the race, Kyle and I went to the awards banquet, and they were talking about the finisher percentages, and they were like 95.5% of the people finished. And I obviously am involved in these Everesting events where, even Tremblant, which had a very successful day where y'all were, 18% of the people did not finish. That's a huge number. So a really hard day at an Ironman might be like 89 or 90% finisher rate. So, it's just usually when you sign up for this, you're going to finish. And I think Kyle and I have gotten to that point where, like, if we sign up for an Ironman, we should finish. If we put in the work. So it's not worrying about that, but yet we still do that to ourselves, because the first Ironman, we made the bike cutoff with 2 minutes to spare. So there's cutoffs in Ironman. We made the first bike cutoff with 2 minutes to spare. We made the next one with 4. And so we've always had this like mentality of like, do everything you can to make these cutoffs. And sometimes that creates its own set of anxieties. And that's where Kyle has to work really hard. I mean, I woke up Friday morning. I've never worried about the swim. I grew up a swimmer. Pulling the boat doesn't feel hard. It's less than 5% of the race. Like, it's just, I shouldn't say it like that. It's something
as a non-swimmer, it's
wow.
It's a 17-pound boat and a 125-pound man. So
yeah, that's insane.
It's insane. It just never resonated with me like that. It was a source of confidence, is what I should say. And I woke up Friday morning with the most pre-race nerve anxieties that I've ever felt. And I was so crippled by it that I was on the verge of tears. Like, I'm not going to even be able to start this race. And I think a lot of that was just by nature of what we do. There's eyeballs on it. There was hundreds of people that were invested in seeing us finish. And so on race day, stuff like that will happen, and that's what Ironman does. You all might have experienced it. You did an event that takes 36 hours, right? Ours is 17 hours. And at one point, the biggest fear for us with Kona is still the bike cutoff, because it's hot and it's windy, and the wind especially can affect us. So as we're doing the climb up to Javi, which is the turnaround on the bike course, our coach had always told us, if you see whitecaps on the ocean, it's going to be windy. So I turned my head to the left as we start the climb, and I see whitecaps, and we can't feel the wind yet. And so I say to Kyle, I go, hey, buddy, it's not a big deal. I just want you to be aware of what we're heading into, but there's whitecaps on the ocean. And he screams at me. He goes, you don't need to worry about that. And we've raced enough now that I've learned, like, listen to him first before you react. What's he trying to tell you? And in that moment, what he was trying to say to me is like, hey, like, okay, but what? Were you going to get off the bike and wait till the wind stops? Like, we got to cut off. So when we hit the turnaround and we started flying, we were going like 38, 40 miles an hour. We're cruising down this hill. And I said to him, hey, buddy, I was like, I just want you to understand. You said what you needed to say to me. I needed to know not to worry, but you should hear what I'm saying to you too. What I was saying is, I'm not worried. I'm aware of this. You're going to have to actually work hard to help me when the wind does start hitting us in the face, which you did. So just keep that in mind as we hit some more adversity later in the day. And it was the last tense moment we had the rest of the day. And those aren't negative, by the way. This is racing. This is not brotherly. This is just like, you feel that tension. You're hiking up in Tremblant. You're looking at your watch going, when am I going to eat lunch? And like, am I supposed to go to bed? And when should I take a nap? Like, all these thoughts enter your head, and you have to work through them. And your training helps you. For us, we have the best competitive advantage over everybody, is that we're brothers who love each other so deeply that in those moments, we know what to do. And that's to lean on each other and figure it out.
It's like amazing that you're doing it as a team, right? Like, you have someone to talk to and to work through those tough moments with.
Yeah. So although it's physically way more challenging for you, Brent, doing this as you are, mentally, you have the support and the positivity that Kyle brings when you need it. You probably, that's almost maybe a yin and yang type of effect, right?
Yeah.
Or relationship.
For sure. And like, don't get me wrong, it beats the crap out of Kyle. It's physically.
Wow, I'm sure.
Yes.
He was sore for 3 weeks after the race, physically sore. And it doesn't mean that it's not. But as he said, his biggest lift is not saying a word about how difficult it is to him physically, because his sole responsibility is to try and keep me from going to those dark places of like, oh my God, there's wind, or oh my God, I can't run anymore. And I'll tell you another story on the run course. And this was a lesson we learned in 2017, where we just didn't feel like racing this day in 2017. So we both started counting to each other. And on that day, I would tell Kyle louder. He'd count to 5 and I go louder. And then we'd get to a point where he was screaming 1, 2, So in Kona, we're starting to struggle and my heart rate's dipping. This is on the run. My heart rate's dipping really low. I'm getting a little nervous that I've not had enough calories. And so I start to try and think through what to do. And in doing so, I said, hey, Kyle, count to 10. I'm going to walk for 10 seconds and get a gel in, and then we'll start running again. And then instinctively, we knew what to do. And so all of a sudden, we never talked about it again. I would just start walking and Kyle would start counting. Like there was no instruction from him to me. There's no conversation. It was like, oh, he's walking, he's getting food. And so you learn, like, again, it goes back to the training question. Like as you go through these moments, you start to understand how you're going to manage them. It's the same stuff that comes up for us in Ironman all the time. It's the bike cutoff, it's the conditions, and it's getting through that run together.
So do you feel like you're like, was this it? Or are you going to keep doing these? Like, how are you feeling now? People ask Stephanie and I that all the time about 29029, and I'm just curious for you guys.
I cannot deny, nor can I confirm.
What a good answer. What a good answer, Kyle.
I would, if an opportunity presents itself, and we can tell our story and make the foundation have a bigger presence, then yes. I'm not done racing. Like I'll still we're doing the Boston Marathon in April. So we got that to look forward to. We're doing the Trophy Challenge in a couple weeks in Orlando, so that will be fun. So we'll see.
The adventures continue.
Yes.
So I'll read y'all a quote because we had 3 board members that raced with us. They were part of. You guys have seen it. Your listeners may not know, but we were raising $1 million as part of Kona, and we actually just hit it 2 weeks ago.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you. Huge deal. But one of the board members that was with us was like my first training partner, and when I was getting ready to do my first Ironman, you get to the end of the training and like you start to kind of be mentally done. You're like, I don't want to do another 12-hour hike. I don't want to wake up and have bananas and oatmeal. Like I just want to drink coffee and not do shit for the day, So he said, do you think you're one and done? This is in 2010 before Kyle's ever asked me. And I said, I don't know. I think I might be. And he sent me this email and the title was Why I Don't Think You're One and Done. And it came with this quote and said, the Ironman changes us. It changes us beyond making us fitter, leaner, and aerobically superior. Of all the Ironman athletes I've talked to, not one of them said they would never do another. Not one. The compulsion, I believe, isn't in the exercise. It's in the emotion. The experience purges emotion in a way that improves our human condition and clarifies our existence. And when you think about y'all's experience, if I said to you the same thing, like, as your friends ask you, like, would you do another one? Like, you can't say no.
Yeah.
Because of what it does for you mentally and emotionally. Forget the physical, which by the way, being this fit is fun. I love when I did that 100-mile bike ride with Kyle, by the way, he drove home with a friend the next morning. I biked back. Yep. So I did 200 miles in 2 days and finishing that, you feel invincible. But what's better is finishing that race and having such a state of inner peace because it's clarified what's important. Like when you asked that question maybe 6 months ago about, how would you spend your day if you weren't doing this? I might have had a different answer, but I sit here today with the perspective of that event and what it does for me mentally and emotionally. And I can say, I'm doing exactly what I want to do.
Yeah. Look, I will never do 29029 physically. I want to, but I'm just not able to. But mentally, absolutely. But I got a bid for you to do this mentally. Yes, I would do it any now and because that's what excites me. And whether it's doing sport or whatever it is that speaks to your listeners, go for it. Like, don't let anything stop you, And if you're scared about it, that can even make you more excited to get up and get to it, I say this all the time. We get to do this. We don't have to do this.
Yeah.
Right? We get to. We don't have to.
Kyle, those are very
more.
inspiring words for everyone to hear. I'm like, yeah. And maybe this is a good time to delve into the foundation. And you've talked a little bit about it. What inspired you to start the foundation and just the whole, goal and message of inclusion for people with disabilities to be athletes and do all these events. Can you guys just talk about that?
We talked about it. We actually talked about this yesterday. And, our parents showed us what inclusion was every day of our lives. Kyle was included in whatever we did. If we were going to hike in Yosemite, Kyle was going to come with us and we would figure it out. That actually happened. Horseback riding. We went as a family and we made sure they had adaptive riding, or that Kyle could sit with my dad on the horse. And so when we did this first triathlon together in 2011, this was an Olympic distance triathlon. It was one of the most kind of amazing athletic feelings of Kyle's life at that point. He had never felt that, and he was experiencing it with his brothers. And so almost instantly after that first triathlon, he said, I want other people to experience this, because he wanted them to see what inclusion really could look like. And that's what the Kyle Pease Foundation was always all about. And so in 2011, it was started. I don't think in 2011 we saw that it would be where it is today, which is inclusion is so much more than sports. You think about the quote that I just read, and you think about what sports can do for the overall human existence, using some of the language from the quote. Like, that's what the Kyle Pease Foundation does, is it shows you what the real possible looks like. And so today, with the $1 million we raised in Kona, we're going to have 8 employees working for the foundation with a disability funded through Hawaii. They're going to all
amazing.
Thank you. They're all going to be getting what's effectively it's a grant that is to support retirement. Folks like Kyle are income restricted because of their government benefits. And every one of those 8 employees is going to be getting a grant from the foundation to go into their legal savings vehicles to support them beyond the finish. So, sports is just the catalyst that creates that. And that's what the Kyle Pease Foundation has been trying to do from the beginning, and how it came to be.
I think Brent said it really well. We didn't know the growth of the foundation when we were starting. Like, yesterday I was in the middle of my workday. One of my employees called in, started talking to me about Social Security and his specific benefits. And, I had to tell him to take a deep breath and, and tell him that it's going to be okay, and to, make sure that, that we were taking care of him. So, that's all that what comes, and they work here, that you have to really be there for each individual in their families.
So, if I'm understanding this right, not only are you supporting athletes with disabilities to, be involved in endurance events, if I'm saying this correctly,
Mm-hmm.
but you're also helping people with disabilities grow. I don't know if the right word is grow, but set aside savings or accounts for later life.
Yeah. So
am I saying that right or not really?
So I kind of breezed past that. So the mission is to improve the lives of people with disabilities through sports and beyond. And we left it very ambiguous like that, because what does and beyond look like? Mm-hmm. And so Kyle can't save money. So I'll just share Kyle. Kyle's income threshold is $2,000. He cannot legally have more than $2,000 in his name, or he'll risk losing all his government benefits. We could do a 6-hour podcast on this. This is
what? That makes no sense.
Well, if you think about, like, when you've had a surgery and you look at the bill, and it's a $40,000 surgery and your copay was $3,000 or something, right? Think about how much of that care flows through for somebody like Kyle. We have 40 hours of care a week funded by the government. We have wheelchairs that cost $40,000 to $50,000 that have to be replaced every 3 to 5 years, funded by the government. So it's why it's set up. And I'm not saying I agree with it. This is why. But there are loopholes. And so you can have what's called an ABLE savings account, which is a college savings equivalency. And if you had that for your kids, you know what it is. Or you can have like a special needs trust. What we've done is we've worked with 2 different law firms now. And so we are going to be making a grant to each of those employees, which will go into that ABLE savings account. So it'll grow just like a 401k at that point, or like a 529. So when we were thinking of why go back to Kona, the answer was, well, when we went the first time, everybody kind of knew when we started the foundation, it was really started in partnership with Kyle and I Racing. And so when Kyle and I did a triathlon, the foundation grew. When Kyle and I did a triathlon, more people came to the Kyle Pease Foundation, volunteers, athletes, and donors. But as it grew, it really grew beyond us. So in 2018, when Kyle and I did Kona cost us around $30,000 to execute. We spent more than $500,000 on the other athletes at the Kyle Pease Foundation. So what we did in Hawaii, while it was a very big deal, it was expensive and it was a personal experience, more than $500,000 went out to support the athletes at the Kyle Pease Foundation that year. This year, it's going to be more than $1.4 million being deployed to individuals with disabilities through sports and beyond. So it grows to so much more. But what we thought of for Kona is, how do we impact the entire individual? Because our lives have been impacted through sports. These athletes that we serve, everybody that works for us has raced with us. They are not just, it's we don't have a better analogy. You remember the old Hair Club for Men ads where it was like, not only am I the president, but I'm a member. You remember?
Yeah.
All right. I'm aging myself with that. So that was just what we were trying to do. And so, so we're putting money in their hands that is going to grow with interest. And then imagine Kyle, who can never have more than $2,000. That might change slightly, but imagine when he's 65 to have this money that's grown for 25, 30 years that can support him, and he doesn't have to keep working just like the rest of us. And they'll have the same government benefits, but they'll have some extra set aside, just like we all would want if we're in that working world.
This is amazing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Because like you said, it goes well beyond the event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's their entire life. And I'm actually looking out at my neighbor who I sent your videos to yesterday because she has like a mid 20-year-old with special needs. And I just think what you're doing is so important because like a lot of people don't understand these nuances, like with the $2,000 and just with housing. Like there's so many things that you don't fully appreciate. So everything
and even think
is,
about, right? Like if you're not like, I had no idea. Like you have educated me so much in this world just by being part of 29029. And I'm so happy. And actually Colleen, the voice of the mountain, Stephanie and I both spoke to maybe a month ago. And she was telling us that volunteers can volunteer for your organization, pushing during races and all. I mean, I had no idea. So
we got a big one.
I'm like, well, I'm doing that for sure. Like that sounds amazing. I definitely want to do that.
I sent it to you had something on Instagram, on your Instagram account. And I sent it to my sister who's a runner. And I'm like, this is your next event. Because she's always looking for like another marathon or something else to do. So yes, you'll see us.
Well, I will tell you the same thing we tell everybody. And our group mimics every single road race you've ever watched. There's the very serious folks in their Oakleys and short shorts and fancy carbon shoes, and they want to win. And then there's the person in the way back that's like, I'm here because there's a donut and a free t-shirt at the end. And that's what our group looks like. So if you all ever want to come, whether you're an elite runner or a casual or a hiker, come with us because you get something out of that experience too. Kyle and I talked about this yesterday too. Like, we set out to help Kyle. We set out to help people with disabilities, but my life is infinitely better because of the Kyle Pease Foundation too. Not just Kyle, but all you feel something. Like think about the people you helped just talking to them on the gondola at Everesting, or the person that helped you. Like it goes both ways.
Stephanie, thank you.
Yeah. Well, both of us.
Yeah, but y'all being together, right? Like those moments support each other, and they gave you so much out of it. Like that's Kyle gets as much as I do.
And like we have athletes that will check our blessed kids that will wish them a happy birthday on their birthday, or wish blessed wife a happy Mother's Day on Mother's Day. And I'm like, whoa, like, this is so cool. This community, this family is way beyond what we have ever set out to do.
Well, you're enriching people's lives every day, which is probably why you answered the way you did for the first question, right? Okay, so if someone's out there listening and they have a disability, they've never done an endurance event, like what piece of advice, Kyle, would you give to them to get them started in their first race? Maybe it's a 5K.
Yeah, get out and put one wheel in front of the other wheel. Just try it, That I always say, don't knock it until you try it, try it. It might make you uncomfortable at first, but the hope and the perseverance that you'll get from an event like what we do is undescribable. So just get out there and do it.
So motivating. I just think of all the young people that probably feel, I can't say how they feel, but I'm guessing feel a little bit stuck. And the fact that this opportunity is available to them is incredible.
Here's another thing for your listeners. In most states, 21 is kind of the end of the real support network. So in Georgia, Kyle could have stayed in high school until he was 21. Imagine that as a primary caregiver, as a mom or as a dad, to be able to, through 21 years of your child's life, or from kindergarten through an extra 3 years, like you have this extra support network. And what we've found is that usually the kids, while the parents might be very overwhelmed learning how to manage a child with a disability who maybe at 10 years old, you're still changing diapers or you're still carrying up a flight of stairs to go to bed. It's the kids when they hit 21, 22 that they're now like, what do we do? And one of the third athlete we ever supported was a young man whose mom was working 2 jobs, and he was just sitting in front of a computer looking at Facebook and YouTube until she got home to feed them and bathe them. And then, she was doing more work. This enriched his life immensely. In fact, he was the first inclusive employee we hired. So he's gained so much more just from coming out to some of it. So like when Kyle's saying, like, just do it, like you have to try some of these things. And I get it. It is harder. It is harder if you live your life in a wheelchair. It's harder, like, to get to these things and to find people to get you there. But there are organizations like ours. There are people that want to support that, whether it's a volunteer, a donor, or anything in between. And once you try it, you start to see the way that enriches their life, the same way all 4 of us could talk about what we've gained from these endurance experiences.
And that young man that Brent was talking about has processed over 4,600 task letters alone this year for the Kyle Pease Foundation. So you don't have to be the face of the organization to make a big difference. But that young man is making an incredible difference by processing all those letters.
Well, it's a ripple effect, right? Mm-hmm. Stephanie and I talk about that a lot. It's like each person that touches somebody else, and
just one at a time.
All over.
That's it.
Yeah.
Right. I know you talked a little bit about any future goals for the foundation, or, obviously you're doing so much already. You talked about, not leaving another Ironman off the table.
I think what we're starting to work towards is how do we really improve the overall condition of the individual we serve. And Kyle is kind of a beacon to that. He has a college degree. He has jobs, multiple, but he has a job and he has an independent living situation. And so how do we start working towards that? So the job piece felt like the first step for us. The second step. Athletics was the first step. So I think the next thing for the foundation is to continue to evolve, be really good at racing. That's what we do. Get as many people racing with the Kyle Pease Foundation as humanly possible. And then as that happens, we have the bandwidth and the numbers to support that growth beyond the finish is the way we see it. For us personally, as Kyle said, like we're still very fit and very active, and I want to be able to do that for as long as I can because of what I get from it.
Yeah, I think, when we came into the beginning of 2024, our goal was 150 athletes. Because in 2023, we served 125. And so in 2025, I want that number to grow by 50 instead of 25. I want that number to grow by 100 by 2027. All right,
This is where we're about to have a brotherly moment where I'm like, you're setting some pretty lofty goals here that you're going to have to execute now, because now that's your job, not mine.
Now that's out in the universe, right?
Exactly.
But he's right. We do want it to grow like that, because
Yeah.
the more people we can serve, the more reasons that we have to grow the areas that we're supporting them.
But a lot of people say, like, how can I help? And you guys are doing that right now by putting more eyeballs on our story and the foundation story. Like, they huge help.
Well, and I was just going to say, how can we help? So obviously you need money, people to donate, and then you need volunteers, right? And I'm starting to learn all these different ways people are volunteering that weren't even on my radar.
Mm-hmm.
But so people can come and push people and run in these events, or are they all running events?
No, it's everything. I mean, what we always say is time, talent, treasure. We need your time.
Okay.
Come volunteer, come spend time with us, come learn. You're spending time with us today. That's important. Talent. We have a working board. The people that serve on our board are doing work for the foundation. We need that. We need their intellectual property. We need their talents. Kyle and I are still trying to figure out how to do this nonprofit thing. And then we do need the treasure. We need people to donate. But we lead with time and talent, because we're fortunate in that if you come and experience one of these events, you're going to want it to grow. There's a 29029 alumni who met us through Everesting and came out to a few events. And he came to our big year-end event, which is next weekend. I know your listeners are going to be hearing this after it's passed, but we give away around $80,000 to families that we serve. So there's a grant program. And we're buying vehicles, paying rent. We're doing some really incredible stuff. And his quote was, "I knew the Peases gave back. I had no idea how big they were giving back." And so we feel like we don't have to ask you for money right up front. We do want your time and talent, though, because once you come give us that and you experience it, it's going to be really hard for you to not do more.
Well, and I already know I want to come and do something. Yeah. And I'm guessing there's like a email list, or what's the best way for people to find out about your events?
So if you go to KylePeaseFoundation.org, we have an event tab that you can look at our schedule. That the 2025 schedule will be released next Saturday, the 14th.
So, okay, good.
We will release that. We have an amazing operation team that worked around the clock to get everybody signed up and get them going. So, yeah, we would love for you guys and your entire listener base to come and join us.
Yes,
Sounds
we would
amazing.
love to. Yes.
We know a lot of runners.
Yeah.
And bikers, actually.
We'll take them all.
Yeah. Well, thanks to 29029, I started running again because I had taken a hiatus for many years. So
welcome back.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm curious, Brent, for you, like coaching 29029 and then going through the Ironman training yourself. Obviously, for me, like 29029 was the hardest thing I've ever done, right? Personally. Mm-hmm. But then when I'm putting myself in your shoes, you must look at us and be like, I mean, that's like taking a walk around the block.
It's different. I mean, look, you're doing an event that on average, 25 to 30% of the people don't finish. Like that's a really hard event. It's different, sure. I mean, and so for me, at the way I train myself, if you ask me to just do the event, I can finish. If you ask me to see if I could be the fastest one, I'd have to train differently. And so it's all relative, and what I would say is just go do hard things. Like look at like the conversation we're having today and the encouragement we're all getting. I hope your listeners are getting the same thing. And I hope they go do something hard, because that's when you start to figure these things out. Kyle and I's hard is Ironman. And we chose that because it speaks to both of us. It challenges him as much as it challenges me. The problem for Kyle, he was kind of alluding to it with 29029, is like, he's really just a bystander. It'd be really hard for him to be as physically present, because it might have taken me 6 hours to do one hike at Tremblant carrying Kyle all that way. What's he going to do in that 6 hours? Where in an Ironman, where for 14 hours, it's got to be on. It's different. So yeah, I don't look at it that way. What I look at it is it's an opportunity for me to learn. I'm watching what y'all are going through and how you're addressing it. And I'm having conversations that make me realize when I get on a race course with Kyle, what I need to be grateful for and what I need to be present for, because I've watched 2,500 people do it in the last 5 months.
And I think you're a fantastic coach, by the way. Like,
thank you. We'll put that
truly
in my
fantastic. I still watch your videos, the YouTube videos, and do the hip mobility,
exercises.
Yeah, thank you. I mean,
we've both gone through, Marnie and I both gone through a little bit of withdrawal. And when the sign up came out and not signing up, just logistically, things, we each have 3 kids. It's like, you can't do it all every year, but we miss our regular training calls with you.
How old are your kids?
Mine are 19, 16, and 14.
And mine are older, actually. I have 18, 21, and 24. So it wasn't, for me, it was more kid. She's graduating high school. She'll be going to college. I don't know what all those dates are. And financially, it's a big commitment. There were a lot of things. I think my husband would kill me if I did another one. Well, we're convinced to last year.
Your husband and my wife can commiserate, because she would definitely kill me if I signed up for another one. Well, this is the part of the interview where Kyle and I always flip it back on you. Think about when you finish an event like that. You're at Everest. Y'all were at Everest. There's only one place to go once you're at Everest. It's down, right? And so when you come down, what's your process for going through that? And that's why we have this recovery series with the Everesting events. Like, go through that, like journal, meditate, move again, like do the things or rediscover the things. I mean, when I train for an Ironman, it is so much stress on the family. I'm running to the baseball game. I'm not missing it great, but I'm standing in the corner with a giant bottle of water, not talking to people, with glasses on, because I'm tired. Right. And so, the first thing I did when I got home was like, we're going trick or treating, and I never wear a costume. The kids ask me for costume. I'm like, put on the costume, just go do those things. But that's my process for getting back into that routine. My process with Kyle is now, don't go sign up for something else. Like, take time to just appreciate it. And y'all are helping us do that, like letting us sit here and talk about ourselves and our race. So that's the question to y'all, is what are those things that you recommend to your listeners, or that you all do as you go through these, big peaks and valleys?
Well, I think you said it so well, Brent, because I think as any parent out there who is taking time from their busy schedule to train for an event, and it's very fulfilling for them, at a physical and more so at an emotional level, but it's re-entry back with your family and just doing things spontaneously. Like my husband was like, you have to go wake surf. And I told him I wasn't doing it all summer because I didn't want to get injured right before the event, because I have bruised ribs and I don't know what's going on with me. But anyway, and I just did it. I was kind of cold, and it was the weekend after, and they made me go, and I did it, and I had fun. And they're like, Mom, that was maybe the best time that you've actually surfed, because they're way better than I am.
Yeah.
And it's just those moments like that, that's living well.
Yeah, the one thing that I've always said, I think Brett said, when you're on the Everest, or when you have completed the Ironman, or whatever you're thinking, you have to go down. And when you're in the down, you have to allow yourself to be in the down. You have to go through all the depression or whatever you go through. But then how do you get back on the horse? What and that's important, that you get back on the horse. That you get to get up and you do a wake start for you. You go on a mile walk, whatever it is, just allow yourself to have those feelings, but understanding that you have to get back on the horse again.
Yeah. And for me, like, I definitely cried a bunch afterwards because I was so sad it was over. And it was hard to relate my experience to the people in my life back in Minneapolis because a lot of them thought I was crazy for doing it to start with.
And they didn't want to hear about it like 24/7.
And
like
just could not relate, right? But going forward, like I keep thinking about, okay, so I'm not doing 29029 and 2025. What is the year going to look like for me? Stephanie and I are planning to do rim to rim, which will be very out of our box. Or not rim to river to rim, a Grand Canyon hike.
Yeah, Grand Canyon.
And I'm planning to volunteer at 29029 so I can still be a part of the community and give back to the volunteers that helped me through so much. I would love to go do that for somebody else. And now I'm learning about your organization. I would love to maybe come do something with you guys. So maybe it'll be more of a year of giving back instead of doing my own personal challenges.
I saw something that I liked where it was like, list out all of your things. Like what are your mom, your wife, you're a friend, you're an athlete now, or you always were an athlete. You're an ultra endurance athlete now. And you start listing it out. It's like, or maybe golf or tennis, you have all these hobbies, right? It's like 12 things that you would say. And what you hopefully start to realize is like, Kyle and I are not endurance athletes. That's not the way we want people to view us. Like that's not, as a person, that's not what defines me. And then you start to realize like, sometimes I'm going to spend a little extra energy on endurance because it improves me as a friend or as a parent, and you start to realize, I think my list is 12 things. And you start to realize that all of those things actually support each other. Like when I can go spend time in nature by myself, I come back with more clarity. So Kyle and I are endurance athletes. It's just not who we are. Y'all are endurance athletes. It's just not who you are. And so that allows you, when you step off the mountain, that you don't have to get right back on it. You can go wake surfing and realize like it's one of the best days of your entire year. But what created the space for that? Like by spending some time on your own things, by training your ass off for 20 weeks and doing something epic with friends and people you care about, that allows you to come back to the family and be a better, partner to your spouse and to better parent to your kids. So that's it. So next year, Kyle and I don't have to be endurance athletes. We can do other things, but we'll probably slide back in there.
That was so beautiful. And I think you're right. Like we get caught up in this label of who we are, our job title, whether we're married, you're an endurance athlete. No, that's not who we are. And I love this exercise you said. I think I'd like to do it myself and encourage our listeners to come up with these 12 things. Like, who are you at your core? And then what are the things that allow you to be who you truly are? Mm-hmm. So
your list could be 20, which by the way, if it's 20, you might want to trim, but if you might also just have 3 or 4 things. I'll leave you, maybe you guys have a couple more questions, but I remember when I was probably at the height of being a jerk to my parents. And
how old were you, out of curiosity?
I was probably 21.
Oh, so I still have a few years. Oh.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know when it truly ends, but I said something to my mom. She was a flight attendant. This is probably the ugliest thing I've ever said to her. She was a flight attendant, and that job allowed her to be present as a parent. She didn't have to work as much or as many days. And I said something to her to the effect of, well, what are you? You're just a flight attendant. And she said, the best thing that I am has been raising you boys and being your parent. And I remember feeling like such an asshole in that moment. But I understand it better now, 20 years later, that being a flight attendant allowed her to be a parent, which allowed her to focus on that. And so my mom's list at that age in her life, it might have just been mom, flight attendant. And that's it. That's your list. My list today as a young parent is like 12 things. Kyle's list, and it can change, next year, my list. So I love it if your listeners would do it. I think it would be fun because what I think you hopefully really gain is that what are the things that allow you to be these things?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have a hard time prioritizing those things. So doing this exercise can help them prioritize what it is they want to make time for in their day, in their week, in their life.
And I hope that your listeners convey that Brent is not an asshole. He's one of the greatest guys I know. But, you know, we all got one.
By the way, Kyle, you're very funny. And I was watching videos preparing for this, and you were making me laugh. Like, you have a very fun, good sense of humor. So you're the funny brother, I think.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
The serious one and the funny one,
That's
right?
it.
Yes.
And the cool one's not here. We have a third brother who's cooler than both of us. So
Is he
I saw
older
that.
or younger?
he's
Or-
Kyle's twin.
Yeah.
Oh, he's
Yeah.
wow. I didn't even know that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as we wrap up this conversation, which has been so fun, by the way, we would love to ask each of you, what does the art of living well mean to you?
I think we've just touched on it through different ways. And so maybe the way I would summarize it is to say, you know, do the things that are authentic to you and do the things that truly fill you up, that when you go wake surfing with your family, that all of those things have allowed for you to be in that moment, which is the exact one you want to be in.
And I would say we all have a cup, whether it's a giddy cup or whether it's an athletic cup. How do you fill your cup every day? Do you want to give back? Do you want to motivate others? Do you want to be a CEO? You know, how do you fill your cup? And then how do your cup get filled? Right? How do you refill your cup? And so I think we have a responsibility in that to make sure that we have our downtime and all of that. But then again, continue to fill it up. Continue to go back to the well and find new ways to get water for your cup.
I love that. And you are the only person that can fill your cup up, right? Like you have to figure that out for yourself.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much.
Thank you. Thank you all. This was fun.
Yeah, fun and also just very moving and motivational for us and for everyone. So, and Brent, you will see us again on another mountain at some point.
Well, let me know where you're volunteering, so I'll be on the lookout for you.
Yes, I have like a bunch of them put in my calendar, and I'm just kind of waiting to see how the rest of life shakes out on which ones I can attend.
Yes.
Well,
I'll have to do that as well.
I will be at one of them.
Which one?
I do not know yet. So
Definitely, I think Utah. I think
trail.
Snow Basin. I'm sorry, not Snow Basin. And then probably so the Kyle Pease Foundation has bibs to the events now. So
yes, I just heard about that.
Yes, so wonderful way to do it, especially for those that think that there's a barrier to entry. We will actually cover your entry cost, but our biggest event, our biggest mountain is going to be Tremblant. So Kyle may come to Tremblant as well.
Okay.
For this year or every year?
No, this is kind of how it worked out.
Okay. Nice.
Well, you will enjoy it, Kyle.
We will link all the foundation information up in the show notes as well.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
And have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.